Good afternoon. I'm Dave Small, and this is the Dave and Dale Nature Journal. And with me today is my co-host, Dale Manette.
Good afternoon, Dave. Good afternoon, everybody. And today, the last program we did was on the bald eagle restoration project in Quabbin. So this one, we're going to see some of the results of that program. We're going to talk about the Royalston Eagle Reserve. Obviously, it's up in Royalston.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful spot. And, this project really started about probably 7 or 8 years ago, and it first came to our attention. Carl Camp, a Royalston native, was participating in the April Bald Eagle Survey, where we look around, and we knew there were nests up here, but they hadn't been officially on the Mass Wildlife list yet. So we made a pretty good effort to try to find it. And Carl's the one that actually cued me in on these nesting birds, and he got several pictures of immature eagles and stuff up here. And again, as you look at the next slide, this is the eagle nest here up in Royalston. The adult eagle flying off the nest and juvenile up in the nest. And so we know that they've been there now for, quite a while, half a dozen years. The nests haven't always been in the same tree, the tree they originally had picked. Sometimes the eagles aren't too bright and they pick a tree that isn't too stable. And in fact, it was one that the wildlife biologist it was too fragile a tree to climb to get to ban the eaglets. So, but it's a pretty interesting spot to begin with. And as you look at the next slide here, where we first went out with members of the Mount Grace Land Conservation Trust to figure out what we could do with this place and what best to do with it. The owners were interested in protecting it, and so we really had to explore it a bit to try to figure out, where we could put a trail, how the trail would impact the wildlife that's in the area. We don't want to make it into Coney Island. And again, we're looking at this esker that goes way out into the middle of the swamp. And this is where one of the trails is located. And it gave us some challenges. Here you're looking at an area that we had to build a bridge, and the AmeriCorps people and some volunteers from Mount Grace actually did build a footbridge here, and that allowed us to have a little bit more of an accessible point. This does bring us right out into the marsh area. It's a good viewing area for a lot of things, and certainly. It's a great place to see eagles. You see our next slide. This one day I was out there with the Mount Grace people, and we were trying to assess what was going on, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. There were eagles, and I could see there were immature eagles, and I just took my camera and started shooting pictures. This one we're seeing is kind of a composite picture of two photographs with the immature bald eagles on the right, and on the left is actually an immature golden eagle. And this is one of those things, and I know Dale has had this experience too, where you take a lot of photographs, then all of a sudden you don't really notice what's there until you get home, look at it, on the computer screen, and lo and behold, I have a picture of an immature golden eagle that was hanging around with the bald eagles up there.
A lot of people will confuse golden eagles with immature bald eagles. When I was working at the Quabbin in the Visitor Center, people would come in all the time, and they would tell me, hey, I've got a picture of a golden eagle I just took out at the Goodnoe Dike, and I'd look at the picture, and it would be a juvenile eagle.
Yeah.
So I'd have to pull out the paperwork, and I'd have to show them. Another bird that people confuse with the bald eagles is the turkey vultures.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people would come in and say, I just saw, 30 juvenile bald eagles, and they were also turkey vultures.
Yep.
So that's a good thing to remember. But you're right, I have taken pictures, and I haven't really realized what I've got until I've got home.
Yeah, well, again, a lot of times when you're taking a photograph, you're looking at more of what your subject matter is.
Correct.
And then, you worry about the details later. You're trying to get it in focus or even find the bird in the shot. It's sometimes even a harder thing to do.
I've been there.
Yeah. So, whenever you're embarking on a big project like this and trying to figure out what its conservation value is, one of the things that you really need to do is try to get a baseline of information on what wildlife is using the area. And, until you really figure out what's going on, you're kind of shooting in the dark. You instinctively, the first time I saw this place, I knew it was pretty special. And there's just a lot to it when you start to think about it. And as a pretty unfocused naturalist, where I look at, birds, butterflies, dragonflies, herps and mammals and all these things.
It's the same with me. I don't know where to begin sometimes.
That's right. So on this particular one, I enlisted the help of the Mount Grace interns, and we went out and used some newish technology. In the next slide, we'll see. This is a remote audio recorder. Everybody's been using trail cameras and stuff for a very long time, and the nice part about this records in stereo, and I program it with a computer to come on for 3 minutes, like 7 or 8 times a day. As it gets, like in the evening, like at 6 o'clock in the evening, and 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, middle of the night, then the pre-dawn at 4:30 in the morning, and on, and it does actually records a lot of information, and I can sit there with my headphones and the computer and actually listen to the different birds and frogs and all the stuff that's going on, and really can make a pretty good detailed list. Dale and I both have done breeding bird surveys and stuff over the years, and some of us are older than we were when we started, and some of the sounds aren't nearly as easy to hear as they once were.
High frequencies.
The high frequencies particularly. But I've found with the ability to use an amplifier on my computer and headphones, I can pick up a lot of those things that I would never hear in the wild if I was out there. And the other cool thing about using this remote device is that you can actually be monitoring a site without the human disturbance. So you put this thing out there for a week or 10 days at a time, and you're not disturbing the birds at all. There was one instance I had on a project up at Tully Dam where a catbird decided that it was the best perch in the world to sit on, and the only thing I heard for 2 days was a catbird on that whole thing. It just kept calling and calling and calling, and I couldn't hear another thing besides the catbird. But they're pretty interesting devices, and you see it again. This is one I had up in the woods, but we actually had the students put one of these out in the marsh on one of the dead stumps that was out in the swamp. And I had an interest for doing that because I was really interested in trying to hear marsh birds and or other ducks or other things that might be out there. And if we key the audio, we can hear what the actual recording from out into into the marsh was. So as we listen to the audio play, should be happening any second. And so anyway, we really got, oh, it is playing. Okay, all right. So as we hear this going, in the middle of it, you'll hear this kind of like a toot, 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 a very kind of a different little song, and that is actually the song of the next bird that you see in the next slide. And all right. And here it is. This is the pied-billed grebe. And the pied-billed grebe was that recording I was actually able to use with the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program to verify the breeding territory of this pied-billed grebe, which got it on the Massachusetts list. There's only about 4 or 5 places in Massachusetts that this bird nests, and so it's really quite special. And it uses these remote marshlands and swamplands. It makes a little nest on a grass hummock, and it's really pretty special. So it was really kind of great to find this thing out there, and it just makes the Eagle Reserve, that much better, because it's another Massachusetts endangered species is actually living there.
Then we got the visitors. I was home one day, and the technology of the computer, to me, just blows me away sometimes. And I was home this early spring, and I happened to be on the internet, and somebody had posted a post about sandhill cranes up in the Eagle Reserve. So I called up Dave, and I asked him about it, and he told me that they were up there, and he told me where to go. He's told me where to go quite a few times in our lives. But so I loaded up. I had just unloaded all my camera gear from photographing birds in the morning. So I drove up there, and I went right out there, and there they were.
Yeah, next slide, we'll see what Dale came across.
There you go. There were 10 of them. You cannot see all 10 of them in this picture, but you get the idea. And they had been there since the early morning, I believe.
Yeah, Ernie LeBlanc is the one that found them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I got out there, and then I looked around, and I discovered I could get even further out thanks to the new bridge that was put in there. So I was there maybe an hour and 15 minutes. I took close to 55 or 60 pictures, and I could tell that they were getting their urge to go, and 3 of them took off, and they headed dead north right up the pond. And as soon as they got out of sight, the 7 that were left all took off, and they followed them. So I went home and spent the rest of the afternoon going through slides of these beautiful birds.
Yeah, and this is one of those things in Massachusetts that they've actually haven't bred here forever, I guess. I don't know. This is fairly new territory for them. And there's a pair that's breeding out in the western part of the state that have been there now for 3 or 4 years. We've occasionally seen them locally. We had one in New Salem that you found, right, Dale, and then...
and I remember when we were working in New Salem, there was a couple of them in Hunt's Farm about 20 years ago.
That's right, They're right in the big Hunt's field.
Yeah.
And then just 3 years ago, there was one, there was a pair of them actually that was up at Perkins Farm in Petersham, up off of Maple Lane.
Yep, I missed them.
And that was pretty good because, it was the farmer that actually called me. It was pretty cool. So, but anyway, so they're much more, becoming more abundant. I expect that they'll be nesting somewhere in the North Quabbin area the next few years. I think it's a great addition to our avifauna.
Absolutely.
And really look forward to seeing more of them, But it's, they're, for people that aren't familiar with the sandhill crane, they resemble a lot like a great blue heron. They're about that size, but they're quite often you'll find them out walking around in farm fields, and especially going after corn, old cornfields and stuff. And they're gray with a little red cap on the top, and they're pretty neat birds in general.
Last spring, I was coming down Route 495 up in Lowell, Lawrence. I was up in Lawrence, and I'd been up there taking pictures of snowy owls. And there was one right in the median of Route 495 looking for mice and voles and stuff
Yep.
in the grass.
Yep, so they're pretty cool birds, and like I say, and we were very pleased to be able to get that many of them right locally, and thanks to Ernie for getting the word out, so we could all see it. Quite a number of us were able to get up there and see it with the use of cell phones, and
Yep.
we don't always have cell service where we are, but we did happen to get it there that day, and so we're going to look a little more at the reserve, and in our next shot we got some pretty common wildlife around these areas, white-tailed deer. One of the things that we found at the reserve was between the beaver and the deer eating things, a lot of the vegetation is pretty sparse in many of the areas, and on the next slide we'll see that there's really kind of a paucity of some of the real vegetation. A lot of what we're actually looking at here also is buckthorn, and buckthorn's an invasive species that is all throughout the North Quabbin area. We see it, and it tends to be a understory, low tree shrub, and it does have berries that the birds eat and move around when they drop their seeds elsewhere. But it doesn't have a lot of good wildlife value. Some of the, it's like eating junk food for birds. So it's not real healthy for them. So one of the projects that I worked on with Mount Grace and the staff there was we got a grant to actually work and pull the buckthorn, and then we put up some fencing along the edge of the swamp edge between the trail and the swamp edge, so that we can keep the deer and the beaver out of some certain areas to give the ground a chance to regrow again. And they also introduced some native plants, some native shrubs like winterberry and blueberry and other things into those exclosures to help get that going again. And a couple of the things about that, number one is to give, the ground a little reprieve and get rid of the invasives, and then also, the good native food plants for different types of wildlife. And the other thing that you get out of that is that you really, it winds up being kind of a partial blind as you're coming up the trail, so you don't bump the waterfowl and all that sort of stuff as you're coming along. So it was just kind of a good all-round project that we worked on, and I think we'll know again this summer. We're going to be monitoring it and seeing how it goes, but I think we'll have some good results of that. So we'll move along and look at some of the other plant life and stuff that's out in this marsh. There's a huge bog, and one of the things about bogs, the sphagnum moss, and you get great things like this pitcher plant, which is actually a carnivorous plant. There are sundews out here, another carnivorous plant. And the sphagnum bog is actually the home of some other rare insects. And one of the things that I've looked for quite often is this insect right here, which is the ebony bog haunter. And the bog haunter is an endangered species. So this is the third endangered species that we've been able to locate at the reserve. And I went out there in early June last year, and with a group of people, and we went out on that trail that I've shown before, and about 3 hours into the searching, we'd only gone about a quarter mile or less, and I sat down on a log, and sure enough, that dragonfly came and landed between my legs, and just goes to show you, it's better to be lucky than skillful, but it was really pretty cool. And this what we're looking at now is actually the, right on the Esker Trail, and this is beaver work. And one of the good things about this location is it's very close to the Royalston Community School, and a lot of the students, the teachers can actually walk their students from the school down to the Eagle Reserve to be able to do outdoor classroom stuff. And this is really, really a great thing for this whole trail system. And you know, here we're looking at a beaver that's been chewing, beavers work, where we chewed on a pine tree. And we saw this at Quabbin back in the days when there was a pretty heavy deer population and not much shrubbery. And by the time beaver get to chewing on pine trees, they're pretty, it's pretty low down the totem pole of what they're.
It's hard time for beavers.
Yeah, it's not a happy sign for the health of the beaver.
Beavers actually have to chew constantly because their front teeth grow, their top two and the bottom two grow. And if they don't chew, the teeth won't wear themselves down, and then they'll have some problems eating, and then they'll end up starving.
Right.
But when you see a beaver that has chewed in a pine tree,
Yeah.
on it like this tree here, you definitely know that the beavers have eaten almost everything.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. It's like broccoli for me. So, you know, as we go on here, and I want you to be able to find this again. If you look at the on the Mount Grace website, which we'll have at the end of the program, but you know, it's at 50 Winchington Road in Royalston, and this is a basic map of the site that shows the trail on the right side that goes out into the Esket, out the Esker, out to the middle. And then there's a new trail that was just established recently, and that we're going to talk about more in a couple of minutes. But while we're out there, I do want to stress on the next slide where we kind of gather more and more information about the area. And there are a couple of apps that you can have on your phone that work well for doing this, and we're tracking this kind of stuff. And one is eBird, and that's a pretty easy program, and several of us have been using it. We've got 125 species of bird so far that we've cataloged at the site. And the other one is actually iNaturalist, which is another app on your phone that you can put together, and both of these can be done on a computer too. But we're really working hard to try to encourage everybody to record their sightings and keep us informed about what's happening out there. So the next slide. I was privileged this summer to be having the accessible trail named after me. I was totally surprised, and this is what you know, the Kim Lin is the woman that probably was the instigator behind a lot of it. We worked together on this trail. She's now the stewardship coordinator for Mount Grace. But we had a nice celebration out there, and this is a pretty good accessible trail. If we look at the next slide, we can see here's all the group coming down for a walk down this paved trail. It's not paved, but it's a pretty good solid trail to walk down. And we had a nice crowd of youngsters and stuff that were there. And you look on the next slide where this is the platform that you see, you know, which was in our studio setup here. We had behind us, but you can see that's Joe Saperchi on the left with his in a wheelchair, and he was actually able to get down there. We have a few modifications to really make the trail perfect, but we're well on our way, and it was a pretty great experience to have all these young people there using the telescope and you know, looking at the different ducks, wood ducks and black ducks and mallards, and all that was there. So that's really that was really a great day, and I was totally honored for that. And finally, on that, just want to give everybody that helped with the photo credits. And this is an aerial shot from a plane that Carl Berry took me up, and we were able to fly over several of our local areas like this. So that brings us to the what the heck. And what the heck, Dale? What'd you see?
Well, when I saw this coyote coming down the trail, that's what I thought. What the heck? This is my favorite time of year, Dave, because the bucks are all out moving and the coyotes are moving. The water is low in a lot of these ponds. So if you've got the patience and you've got the time, I just will find a place and I'll set, like this morning, I set for 3 hours. And I had a nice buck come out and walk the shore a little bit before it went back up into the woods. Like I tell people who ask me about photography, I just tell them patience.
Yep, there it is. All right, and my last what the heck is the next one is going to be the autumn meadowhawk. And as we get past these first couple of frosts and it gets to be, pretty much the end of the insect season, these are one of the last dragonflies to be flying. They'll fly all the way around to Thanksgiving. Any day that we get over 40 degrees and we don't have, a 0 degree frost kind of thing. But the males on the left are with a bright red, the females on the right, that's kind of a dull yellow. But I'm kind of sad to see these guys because I know it's the last dragonflies of the year that I'll be seeing. So I really thank people and I encourage people to send in photographs or things that they've seen or don't know what they are, and we can take a stab at trying to identify them.
So Dave and I can look at them and say, what the heck?
That's right. That's what we do. And, it's really, we really thank everybody for tuning in, and we thank AOTV, the Mount Grace Land Conservation Trust, and all our naturalist friends at the Athol Bird Nature Club for our support. And here we are. All right. See you next time.